morning.
Good morning, Governor, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Patrick Cates, Director of Administration. To give you an overview, the purpose of this contract, we've been working on some advanced planning to refurbish the Nevada State Library and Archives. We have some conceptual drawings here that, for you to see that they have produced so far. What we are trying to do, the State Library and Archives was built in 1992. It has not had a major upgrade or refurbishment since that time. When it was built, the entire building was the State Library and Archives and only housed the staff of that division. During the recession, when times were hard, a lot of the building was converted into office space for other state agencies. I think what that did was limit the amount of space that agencies had for training and meetings. Before the recession, a lot of agencies utilized the building for those types of activities. And we've undertaken this project in part to refurbish the library itself and turn it into a 21st century library, and to make it focus on the workforce development of state employees. Governor, you had me convene a HR working group with other state agencies, and this has been part of the conversation that we have had with them. We did bring in a space planner for the library to really look at the library, its collections, the layout of the building. You know, a 21st century library has a lot of collaborative workspace, meeting space, and they have a mission for workforce development. And the state library is a specialty library that is focused on state government. If I could just briefly mention the project purpose. The goal of this project is to transform the existing building into a state-of-the-art facility to restore the vitality of the State Library and Archives, to optimize the accessibility of Nevada's unique information resource and knowledge, to develop state employees' capability and effectiveness, to equip state employees with 21st century skills and abilities, to facilitate a 21st century workspace, to facilitate lean state government, and to give Nevada a competitive edge in engaging employees and to recruit and retain excellence. I've been in communication with folks at the Nevada System of Higher Education about developing some workforce stream from their facilities to the state. Also talk to them about developing certification programs for state employees to advance that they may be able to provide. The Department of Administration, I think virtually every one of our divisions has some statutory requirements to provide state training to state employees. So it would be used for those purposes. It could host special events. We've talked about vendor fairs where we could bring in particularly IT vendors to do a demonstration projects. It's a really exciting project. You know, the old assembly chamber, as you well know, was very underutilized before we did the project in here that made it possible for us to have this meeting today. What we've found is if we build it, they will come. This room is being utilized every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, and I see the state library right behind the Capitol as a real asset and could be part of sort of a compound for state learning, development, meetings, that sort of thing. So that's the gist of what we're doing there. This is advanced planning work, some conceptual drawings. This would go into a request for a CIP project for the next session.
Thank you, and I think it's an exciting project, and I didn't realize 1992 was so long ago, but time flies, doesn't it? But in any event, I think it's really important that we have a state-of-the-art facility in that regard to address the needs of the state workforce and, frankly, the changes that are coming with technology. So
yes.
I'm going to be very supportive of this. Do you, I mean, I'm sure you anticipate this question, but what is it that you anticipate for the entire project to cost?
Chris Schmitz, for the record. That answer will become available to us on April 9th.
Oh, you got to have a ballpark. Come on.
I think a large portion of the construction will really be FF&E. Much of the existing building is going to be utilized in its similar structural form. We'll probably add a stairwell, a grand staircase up to the second floor to be making it more an integral part of the first floor. So I would say roughly $400,000 worth of construction, and then the remainder would be FF&E. But I would love to come back.
Okay, no, I just curious, but and that's going to be the technology piece, I would assume, to ensure that we have the best technology in the facility. All right.
For the record, if I could just add, Governor, Patrick Cates for the record. So the FF&E package, it'll be technology, it's furniture, it's fixtures. There are, glassed-in meeting rooms that are kind of furniture systems. The other thing, as soon as all of this work is done with TSK, I'm going to hit the road and reach out to private companies, particularly technology companies, and see if they will partnership in any respect to provision technology, maybe fund internships, whatever I can get. So I hope that by the time it comes to CIP requests, we've got some private sector partners to help us.
No, and I don't know if the members in Las Vegas can see this other, but I really like the looks of that collaborative space for people to meet with the skylights, sunroom.
We like it too.
So hopefully you'll put a good coffee shop in there, right?
It does include a food service. Right now in the drawings, it's dubbed the Governor's Grill.
Ah. The food will be really good, right?
It should be, you bet.
I didn't know that.
Is the governor cooking?
Of course, I need a job after this year, right? All right, thank you, gentlemen. Any other questions? All right.
None here. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to contract number 11, which is state purchasing. Mr. Hague, good morning.
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. I'm sorry I don't have the props that Director Cates and Mr. Simmons did. The contract before you actually does two things. One, it extends a current contract that we entered into last year for an e-procurement system for a 5-year period, so through 2024. And the subscription fees that it costs to continue that over that 5-year period. And then it also adds what we're referring to as Phase 2, which is an integration into the state's Advantage financial system. That will allow us the full rec-to-check capability and automate the state's procurement process from end to end. That integration into Advantage is roughly $600,000 of the contract cost that is before you. And then obviously for the integration of Phase 2, there's a subscription fee to that as well of an additional $325,000. So for this 5-year period, the total subscription cost goes up to $625,000 annually, and then the one-time implementation cost of $624,000 for Phase 2. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And how's the system working for you now?
Yeah, thank you, Governor, for that question. So the e-procurement system, Nevada ePro, as we're referring to it, rolled out to state purchasing. Rolled out to vendors in December, rolled out to state purchasing in January. We're now running 100% of RFPs and bids that we handle through this application. It's working incredibly well. It is providing vast efficiencies. It's allowing our employees to spend time on more important consultative approaches with our agencies, and it's beginning to provide us the analytics that we desperately need. Those analytics will become much more robust when we integrate into Advantage, because that financial data is obviously key.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Yes, Governor.
Yeah, Madison.
Thank you. I just wanted, so everything that you just explained, that's all new. I just was curious, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but it looked like, according to my staff, looking at it, it was about a 200% increase from the original cost.
So I didn't do the math on the increase, but it is a substantial increase, and I think it's important to understand where those additional dollars are going. So we are, in the first initial contract that was approved July of last year, was $1.7 million,
Seven, correct.
I believe. So that was for phase one. So what that included was the implementation of a new vendor self-service portal. It provided for the automation of our sourcing initiatives, business intelligence, contract management. So that was all paid for in that first phase in the 1.7 million. What we're coming back for now is an additional 4.2 million. That 4.2 million pays for phase two, which is the integration into Advantage. That was not contemplated in phase one. And it also allows us to pay for now the increased subscription cost that includes phase one and phase two. So where in phase one, the subscription cost was $300,000, that subscription cost has now gone up to $625,000 with phase two. So that's where the additional monies are going over the 5-year period.
Okay, well, my main question was, the 200% increase, because that's approximately what it is, but that we did not anticipate this in the very beginning is what I'm hearing from you, that you had the original cost of 1.7, and then now you've gone in and, I guess, looked at other resources or other things that you wanted to include, and then this vendor upped it another 325,000. Am I getting that correct? So I'm just concerned about us approving something that's over 200% increase from the original accounting of what you had indicated. So thank you, Governor.
I suppose it begs the question, Mr. Hague, is it worth it?
Thank you, Governor. Jeff Hague for the record. Absolutely, because I think what phase one only contemplated automating half of our process. And phase one did not anticipate an integration in the state's financial system, because as everybody knows, we're contemplating a replacement of that financial system, and the initial thought was we would wait. As that project gets pushed out, and as we've learned about the efficiencies that ePro could provide us, phase two is absolutely worth it, if you will. From the context of that Advantage integration will allow us to realize what our real spending is, to have those analytics, and will be able to allow us to better get our arms around what we're all spending together and leverage that spend collectively at a quicker pace.
And let's see, the Secretary has always been a fiscal hawk, which I appreciate. Do you think this is it? I guess, will there be another big chunk that comes later down the road, or is this pretty much what we're looking at?
Thank you, Governor, for the question. Jeff Hague for the record. So with phase two, should it be approved today, this is the full end-to-end technology suite for Nevada ePro. We are contemplating a more robust contract management application that we may come back with at a later date. Would just allow us to manage the state's contracts post-award in a more thoughtful way. That's a pretty expensive endeavor there that we're still researching. We may come back for some training support from Periscope. We are looking to roll this out hopefully in the fall to state agencies, and we'll want to have as many resources on deck as possible to roll this out. So we may come back for some training dollars at a later date, but we're trying real hard to be able to accomplish that in-house within the state purchasing team.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on this contract?
Governor, if I might, just the last one where it went up $325,000 for the vendor costs. Is that anticipated that'll continue to climb, or do you have a contract signed with them for a period of time? Because that's quite a steep increase.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for the question. Jeff Hague for the record. So yes, the new subscription fees, which represent the $325,000 increase for Phase 2 functionality that you referenced, is locked in for this 5-year contract period. And if I could, Madam Secretary, follow up after this meeting, I'd love to give you a breakdown of what Phase 2 will realize for the state and what functionalities and features that we get in exchange for those additional monies that we'll be paying annually.
I look forward to that. Scott Anderson's in the audience. You can talk to him and set it up. Thank you, Governor.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Mr. Hague. Next is Contract 24, Department of Health and Human Services and Medical Transportation Management.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So the contract that we have before you today is for our non-emergency transportation vendor, MTM. They're currently under their current 2-year contract, and we're asking to extend this for an additional 2 years. We've noticed a increase in utilization. At the time that they came on board, they're required by contract to do education on their company and the marketing for the service, which was successful because we have seen an increase in the utilization. But we also saw an increase in the cost per ride. We're trying to be as creative as possible, especially in the rural areas where transportation can hinder recipients getting to their medical providers, pharmacies, therapists, and so forth. So with this contract, we're also asking for a rate increase, which seems odd since we used this as a budget efficiency in our last, in the 2017 session, because it did decrease from the previous vendor. However, at this time, because of the utilization and the additional requirements that we've put on the contract, we have opted to see if we could extend this contract. We weighed the risk of going through an RFP process. However, the original bid that came in from the vendor was $2.85 per member per month. And all of the bids that came in the prior RFP were also higher than what we had selected with MTM. So we negotiated it down to the $2.35 per member per month, with the incentive payment paid on a quarterly basis, which is an additional 10 cents per member per month if the vendor meets all 12 of the performance requirements. They have to meet all 12 in each of those months to qualify for the bonus payment. The first year, we expect that this is approximately about $800,000 for the per member per month increase. That would be fiscal year 19, with approximately 195 if they were to get that 195,000 should they get that bonus payment. And then in state fiscal year 20, the total would be with the per member per month plus the incentive would be about $1 million, and the same for the following year, 2021. In 19, we anticipate, if possible, using IGT if there's funding available from that category. If not, we would have to include this in our supplemental request. For 20 and 21, we would build this into our budget. And if state general fund isn't available at that time, we would again look at our IGT reserve to see if we could pay the difference. The numbers that I quoted to you are the state general fund numbers. The contract itself is much higher because it includes the federal total.
What does a client look like who takes advantage of this service?
These are our individuals, anybody that qualifies for Medicaid that needs, whether it be transportation to go pick up prescriptions, to get to their doctor appointments, when they're discharged from a hospital to get back home. It's the ride to and from, if needed. We also have the clientele that have dialysis appointments, and so we call those subscription rides. So if they have 3 or more appointments on a regular basis, they would have a subscription. So it's already pre-scheduled. They would do the follow-up the day before to make sure that they're going to the appointment. But then we also have the as you need it, make a call, and we would schedule those rides. The interesting thing is right now, I'm sorry, I get really excited about this stuff. The interesting thing is right now we have approximately 120,000 scheduled rides per month. So it is being utilized quite a bit, which is impressive because that means people are getting the services that they need.
And that's the thought that was crossing my mind, is what good is it to provide coverage if there's no access? Do you have any problems with people not showing up or not being available when the ride arrives?
I believe I will defer to Kirsten Coulomb. She's the chief of our long-term services and supports unit who oversees this contract.
Good morning, Kirsten Cohn for the record. So we have that information that we can check if the providers don't show up. Either the recipient can call in and let us know that, or let MTM know that. And then we also, that has to be verified in order for the trips to be reimbursed ultimately. And so they have a trip call log, and the recipients have to sign on the trip call log, if the travel log, excuse me, if they actually receive the ride from their house to the destination and then back. And so that information has to be verified, and there does have to be a percent for the service level agreement that the rides, that there, is X number percent for the shows.
And what is your longest ride? Are these individuals that are going, say, from Winnemucca to Reno to get medical services? Could it be anything?
Kirsten Coulomb. So yeah, it depends. We depends on whatever the individual's medical need is. We assess what their medical condition is in order to determine the appropriate mode of transportation. We do have some instances where the individuals will go to Utah, and so sometimes that can be through a bus trip. We also can reimburse for commercial flights. So it depends on, however, the stability of their medical condition in order to have the transport.
I'm sorry, I'm curious too, but so are most of these urban rides versus rural to urban?
So we have, we can get you the specifics, happy to do that. We definitely have rides throughout the state, so I can't speak to whether there's a greater representation in the urbans. We do have, there are urban rides that we work with Renown Hospital, for instance, to have outreach with them to educate their social workers on how to utilize the MTM system. And then we also, we are traveling tomorrow, regardless of the snow, to go to Winnemucca and Elko to meet with those rural transportation providers. And so we are currently looking at the state as a whole, our adequacy of our network of transportation providers. And so we can have that information as far as for which areas in Nevada have contracted transportation providers. And so we're assessing that to make sure that there's not a gap or an unleft need in a particular area.
Governor, I would make the assumption, though, that the majority of our rides would be in Clark County just because of the population that we serve there.
And where I'm eventually going here, I'm just out of curiosity, is you've got the network transportation, so you got Uber and Lyft, which I understand are going to start offering a health component for rides to and from healthcare visits. Have you done any type of comparison of the cost of doing that versus what we have here?
So we have looked at it from a state perspective, but it's my understanding that actually MTM, our vendor, is also looking at it. We have some concerns, obviously, in our rural areas, and we do pay for friend or family to drive them to their appointments. What we were thinking, though, is if you could maybe then have that friend or family become an Uber or a Lyft driver, they could then help assist the community. But we're still in that evaluation period. But it's appropriate for it to run through MTM and not the state directly at this time.
And then, again, I keep going here, I'm sorry, but is there, similar to Uber and Lyft, when you call one of these, can you see where they are and when they're going to arrive via an app?
I don't believe that technology is available with MTM at this time. But they do have a call center, and like I said, they try to make contact the day before a scheduled ride to make sure that everybody will be present.
And this MTM may not like me asking these questions, but I'm just curious, because if it's more efficient, A, I would like to see if they have that technology, but B, if it's more efficient and better to use some of these other alternatives, or the family members, as you discussed, it's certainly something that I would like to explore.
Absolutely, we'll get that information.
Okay, thank you. Great. Any other questions from board members on contract number 24?
May I ask for just a summary of this program as well, just to be sent directly to me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. No other questions here, Governor.
Okay, thanks. No, and as I said, I think this is a great program, and it's absolutely necessary given that we have a lot of clients, and most of these clients don't have transportation, and for their health needs, they have to be able to get to those appointments. So I think it's a good thing. Given the these variety of options that we have now, I just want to make sure that we're looking at all of them and not always doing what we've always done.
We agree, and we are looking at those other options. We're looking for as much flexibility as possible to meet the recipient's needs.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Next is contract number 30. Just the Division of Minerals.
Thank you, Governor, and members in Las Vegas, and forgive my bandaged appearance today. I got my forehead carved on yesterday, so doing my best today. The contract before you is a collaborative effort between the State Division of Minerals and Clark County to do a hard closure on an abandoned orphan mine, which has become a hazard to the local community in southwest Las Vegas. The Arden Mine began production of gypsum in 1909 and operated to 1931 on unpatented claims on federal grounds. The area was mined in a room and pillar fashion, where areas of ore were horizontally mined out, leaving behind unmined vertical pillars of rock to support the workings. There's miles of underground workings in this area of this gypsum mine. The entirety of the mine workings were on BLM land until May 7th, 2003, when several parcels of land were conveyed to Clark County. 41 of the 48 identified portals to the Arden Mine are located on Clark County property, wherein the remaining 7 are on BLM land. The division worked with the BLM several years ago to have those closed. The Arden Mine was added to the Abandoned Mine Land Database of the state in 1996, and the Division of Minerals has repaired or replaced fencing numerous times around these workings. The city of Las Vegas and its suburbs have expanded significantly over the past few decades and have brought homes, schools, and businesses to within walking distance of dangerous abandoned mine workings. In the numerous times that my staff and I have been down there, we generally find people inside the workings recreating, doing various different things. The division and Clark County have collaborated over the past year to find a permanent solution to the dangers posed by the Arden Mine. The division budgeted $100,000 for mining claim fees, revenues for this project in the current biennium. The division's abandoned mine land program is funded by mining claim fees that are collected annually and are designated under Chapter 513 of Nevada revised statutes to address AML-type remediation in the state. These are not taxpayer or general funds. Previous attempts to secure portals at the Arden Mine involved the construction of metal T-posts and barbed wire fences across the front of each portal. Unfortunately, vandalism has created a problem down there as the community encroached on this, and there's more people visiting these workings. As the county has developed a future path up there for recreation, they want to see these closed in time. The Division of Minerals will manage the project pending approval of this by the board today. The Clark County Commission is partnering with us on this. They have designated $150,000 for the project at their last meeting on February 20th. Construction work is planned to start in April for 25 days. The scope of work identifies the method of closure as backfilling with locally sourced material, and the Division of Wildlife and Clark County Desert Conservation Programs will handle any wildlife-related issues, as there are some down there with the desert tortoise that have to be addressed. The Division of Minerals Abandoned Mine Land Contractor is experienced in this type of hard closure work, as we do it regularly throughout the year, and has worked on projects across the state.
All right, well done. I'm afraid to ask you how you define recreation and what's going on in those tunnels, so I won't. I called for this to be put on the record because it has been the subject of a lot of media attention, as well as is an attractive nuisance and a public safety hazard. So given the 150 that we're putting in and the 150 that Clark County is putting in, will that be sufficient to close it down once and for all?
Thank you for the question, Governor. We believe so. We've looked at it several times. Our AML contractor has been there 3 or 4 times over the past 5 years. We've done a fairly detailed scope of work. The methodology is relatively simple with equipment backfilling portals with at least 10 feet of material and recontouring the side of the hill. There's no environmental remediation issues with this. It's just primarily dirt work.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from board members?
No, Governor, thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you feel better too. Yeah. I believe our final contract is contract 36. Mr. Johnson, good morning.
My name's Eric Johnson. I'm the administrator for Nevada State Parks, and the contract before you is a consultant contract to help us tell the story at Ice Age Fossil State Park in southern Nevada. For those that don't know, the state has owned for many years 300 acres down in southern Nevada. It's in North Las Vegas at the very top end of Decatur. When you look at it driving by, it looks like very typical Mojave Desert landscape, but when you go out on the property, you're almost literally tripping over fossils from the Pleistocene era. We've gotten the conceptual design done on the building. We've figured out utilities. We've figured out which areas we need to avoid. But now the next step is, what part of the story do we tell and how do we best tell it? And so that's what this RFQ produced, was a consultant that could bring that entire story together, prehistory to modern history, and help us tell that in an informative way and showcase what this property is. That wasn't possible until we had the initiative last session.
And for those of us who didn't take that class in college, when was the Pleistocene era, and would you go down a little bit of the roster of the fossils that are out there?
Absolutely, Governor. Eric Johnson. It's about 10,000 years ago, and the area looked much different than it does today. It was a wetland area. It was obviously populated by creatures that don't exist anymore, including the Columbian mammoth. We've also found sloth fossils, we meaning a collaborative group of many people, and the only knuckle bone from a dire wolf found in Nevada, the only evidence that a dire wolf ever existed in Nevada, which in the paleontological world is a big deal. That had to be explained to me, but it's a big deal having the dire wolves evidence in Nevada.
Well, thank you. And while you're here, any updates on the East Walker
Yes,
park?
sir.
Yeah.
The Elbow area, which is a pretty renowned blue ribbon trout fishery, now has restrooms, picnic tables, campsites. There's fire rings down there. We've got the contract set for the first phase of the Pitchfork Campground, day use area and group area. Construction will begin on April 12th. We're working with a lot of different agencies to make sure that experience includes camping, hiking, rafting, and I hope exceptional fishing on that end of the park also. So I think we're moving quite rapidly on it. I'm pleased with the progress. It should be a good experience for all Nevadans.
So when do we get to use it?
I was anticipating that question, Governor. Right now, to be realistic, we're hoping for Memorial Weekend, but it may be more like July 4th weekend. But we're in that area right now.
Sooner than I thought. That's great.
Good.
I'm excited to see it. All right, board members, any questions with regard to what I think is one of the best named state parks, Ice Age Fossil Park? That's pretty catchy. Any questions?
No, Governor. Thank you.
None.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Okay, board members, any further questions with regard to agenda item number 14, contracts 1 through 42?
Move to approve.
Attorney General has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by the Secretary of State. Any questions or discussion on the motion? Hear none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 3-0. We'll move on to agenda item number 15, which are the
Governor?
master service agreements. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to leave, and I wondered if you'd be willing to take agenda item number 19 out of order so that I could go after that.
All right, let's move to agenda item number 19. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. Item 19 is a report on the maintenance projects that are being worked on at the Grant Sawyer building. This is a result of a request at the last Board of Examiners meeting from the Secretary of State. The Department of Administration is going to be here to describe the work that is being done on that building.
Mr. Cates, good morning again.
Good morning, Governor, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Patrick Cates, Director of Administration. So we provided a report on the Grant Sawyer building and the maintenance work going on there effective February 22nd.
Yeah, it's right here.
If I could just maybe give a little brief background on this. So the Grant Sawyer building, there have been concerns raised by personnel in the building about conditions in the building, thermal discomfort, concerns about air quality. The media in Southern Nevada has picked up on that, and they've run some stories where they have dubbed the building a, quote, sick building, unquote. There is a history with the building. Approximately 20 years ago, there were problems at the building with mold that had to be abated, as well as some tiles on the facade that were falling off. So there's definitely a history there of problems, but that goes back a couple decades. This last summer, we had a chiller failure at the building. That resulted in what our consultant terms thermal discomfort. Conditions were very unpleasant for several days in the building until an emergency chiller was put in place. We also have a CIP project that is ongoing to upgrade the HVAC system, which also has contributed to some of the conditions in the building. I think concerns started to rise to my level. I don't have exact dates, but I believe it was October, early November timeframe. And that resulted in a series of meetings between myself and my staff and personnel in the building. And mostly this has been concentrated on Secretary of State and Attorney General's offices, where most of the concerns had come from. I personally went down there and sat in on some sessions to really understand people's concerns. It was kind of all of the above of the things that I just mentioned where people's concerns were. We definitely noted that there were some deficiencies in housekeeping and maintenance at the building. So we immediately tried to escalate actions that we were taking in the building. We had an industrial hygienist who was in the building who had taken some samples. We brought on board a second industrial hygienist and medical doctor who is doing a whole building assessment that we'll go into in a few minutes in some more detail. We provide notices to those employees that had concerns of the C1 process for workers' comp claims. And throughout this, we had some pretty significant staffing changes. Chris Schmitz came on board as the interim administrator in October. And in December, and he really took the bull by the horns and tried to get a full assessment of what was going on in the building. And we also brought on a little more than a month ago Ron Cothran as the deputy administrator for the buildings and grounds section. Ron worked for me when I was at Department of Wildlife. He really has very high standards and very customer service oriented. So I was very thankful to have both of them on this, and I think we've made significant progress in working through the projects and addressing people's concerns. We have diverted staffing resources from B&G from the north, as well as some funding to focus on the building to address some of the deficiencies. And for about the last month or so, we have been sending out weekly communications to all the agencies at the building to keep them apprised of the work that's being done. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Chris Schmitz to go through the report and provide you updates.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Chris Schmitz for the record. So the presentation today is really to provide a complete assessment of the conditions and the work that's being done by the Department of Administration to improve the conditions at the Grant Sawyer building and to address the concerns of the occupant. occupants. I'll do that, or I'll elaborate on that a little bit by category. The first category is HVAC project. As Patrick alluded to, we have two major capital improvement programs going on right now at the Grant Sawyer building. The first one is a replacement of the central plant equipment down there. And the second one replaces the direct digital controls for the building. Both are currently about 65% complete, and the work is progressing nicely. The chillers have been installed this week. All the major equipment's in, and all that remains is the piping and the electrical work, along with some of the direct digital controls and final commissioning. During the process of construction, two key elements surfaced that I would like to focus in on directly. When we opened bids on the central plant project, it came in significantly under budget, which we're grateful for. Because during construction, we found they're called line sets. It's a series of 3 or 4 valves that service each variable air volume box. There's 270 of them in the building, and as would be normally assumed, the leaks occur around valves generally. And these valves are there to control the water temperature to each VAV box. We're in the process of replacing all 270 of those line sets. This was work that was added by change order as we started getting into the construction of the project. That's germane to the issues that we face there, because if there's mold present, it was created by water. So the source of the problem is being removed right now, and that also will be completed by May 5th. The second interesting area that we discovered is that there are outdoor air dampers that are non-functional in that building. When we discovered that, that also is germane to the issues that the employees are putting forth about the air quality in the building. And so when we go to commission it, especially the portion that involves the direct digital control project, we'll fix all of those air dampers that provide outdoor air to the building. And as you could imagine, this will help with getting the correct outdoor air mix into the building. So between the two, the line sets being replaced and the outdoor air dampers being addressed, I think that's key to what we're seeing in terms of complaints from the occupants there. So that's, in my mind, good news. I think by the middle of May, we're going to be in good shape down there as far as addressing much of the issues that have surfaced on that building. There's more, though. The ceilings. There's a lot of ceiling tile there that has evidence of staining on it from water leaks. And I can tell you that all of the stained ceiling tiles have been replaced on the 4th and the 5th floors. And this week, we're moving down to the 3rd floor. We anticipate that that work will be complete by June this summer. So the ceilings will have a new look to them too, which will also help in terms of just the perception of we're fixing the leaks, and then we're fixing the tile, we're replacing the tile. The next category that I want to talk about is mold. As Patrick mentioned in his opening comments, we brought in a certified industrial hygienist to investigate back in December. We did the inspections, interviewed people, especially the occupants on the 3rd and the 5th floor, as he mentioned. And indoor air quality tests performed at that time didn't find elevated levels of mold spores. However, subsequently, Risk Management Division contracted with a second industrial hygienist and a medical doctor that routinely conducts building-wide indoor air quality investigations, as well as sampling. We took 20 samples in various locations on January 8th under the direction of that hygienist and the doctor. The laboratory tests are due or will be complete by around March 15th, just in a few days from now. Those will be provided directly to Dr. Craner, who will assemble a final report that will be available on or around April 15th. Once this report is complete, I want to make sure it's put on the record here that that report will be made available to all of the occupants in the Grant Sawyer building. Now, the good news is that the doctor in his report will have a summary of findings. The better news is that he will compare symptoms of the occupants to the results of the samples. And then the best news is that it will provide any necessary cleaning protocol for us to follow up on. And I can assure you that Buildings and Grounds and Public Works will be following up rigorously with whatever recommendation he provides so that we can clean that building appropriately and following his recommendations carefully. One thing just I would like to add is that the staff at Buildings and Grounds and Public Works has been trained to a certain protocol that if there are any other pipe leaks that do occur outside of those valves that have insulation on them, especially insulation with any dark colored stains on it, that Buildings and Grounds will immediately notify Public Works' project manager, who will inspect it and sample and then get it carefully abated. All of that piping is in a return air plenum, so we'll take very much care to ensure that no spores would be released into the air plenum. Once that work is complete, then Buildings and Grounds staff will be notified, and they'll fix the leak and replace any insulation as needed. And what I can say is that we're going to make every effort to get that process done within a week of the time it was first brought to our attention. The next system is roofing repairs. The good news is that we found roof leaks and they're fixed on the roof. The better news is that in mid-May, we're going to begin a construction project to completely replace the roof and the roof drains at the Grant Sawyer building. This work will occur at night, not during the day, and we'll have it complete by the middle end of July of next summer. There are pigeons that do like that Grant Sawyer building very much. And so what we've got going on there is that as soon as the new roof is installed, there'll be a net that's installed, a permanent netting over the roof. And also, we're going to provide a hawk-shaped drone that emits a noise similar to an actual hawk. And I can say that our staff is fighting over who gets to operate the drone right at this time. In regards to those pigeons, we're starting this month, actually right now, with a live transport. It's actually a trap and transport and then release strategy. And that will continue until we start the roof in May. Odor issues, that's another topic. There were reports of sewer odors in some of the restroom areas in that building. So what we did is did a smoke test of all the sewer vent system in the building. We did identify one seal that was replaced on the second floor in a restroom there. Then again on March 1st, just recently, we found a cracked plumbing vent that we fixed that day. That also contributes to the odors there. So while we were there and we got the vent fixed in the beginning of this month, we also had Southwest Gas out, and they did a detection test through the building and determined that no gas leaks are present. So we've got that ruled out. And then I'm wrapping up here, but housekeeping and maintenance, that's the next issue I wanted to talk about. As Patrick mentioned, we've reallocated our resources in the Las Vegas area with an emphasis on this building for now. And what I would say is that shortly after I got involved and got the position that I'm in right now, I selected a team of leadership from B&G up north here and asked them to spend a week down in Las Vegas investigating our contracts that we have for contract labor, the conditions. I asked them to meet with all of the facility managers in every building that we manage down there. And Ron Cothran, when he came on board, joined them, and they went down during the week, the middle of February. And during that tour, it was interesting. We found many different toilets, sinks, urinals, soap dispensers that were inoperable and had been bagged or covered up. And I'm glad to report that by the end of July, we'll have all those fixtures replaced. During the initial, we've already started that work now, and we found that when we pull off the fixtures, almost half of the pipes that service those fixtures have a reduced capacity. There's been restricted flow. So we're running a camera and a snake through there and fixing all the pipes as we replace the fixtures. So I'm really looking forward to July. I really feel like we're going to be in tall cotton by the middle of this summer in that building down there. When we were looking through there, we found that approximately 40% of the light fixtures, the bulbs had not been replaced, burned out, so those will all be done. They're being done right now. So really, I can just say in closing that we really intend to provide a pleasant working environment for our people that work in that building just as soon as we possibly can. And I think, again, by June, depending on Dr. Craner's report, we'll have that building clean. The mechanical system will be operating. The return air vents, or excuse me, the outdoor air vents will be operational. The valves will be fixed. We're going to scrub that place just like the doctor recommends, and I think that you'll see a different environment down there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shimitz. Questions from?
Yes,
Attorney
Yes, Governor. Mr. Cates, and it's Shimitz, or am I saying that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Shimitz. I appreciate how engaged you all have been, I believe, since December. I hope you understand how problematic this is for my employees. I know the Secretary of State's going to say the same thing. And this just needs absolute prioritization, specifically the mold. I would request that we do everything we can to shorten the timeline of this particular mold audit that we're going through. For us, every week matters now. I have employees that are not working in this building and they're working from home. So this has been going on for many, many months, as you all are well aware. So I know you have a lot of things to fix, but the mold is still a huge priority. That we have employees that absolutely are having health effects, and we just have to work to get that alleviated. And I hope that you all as a department will continue to try to build back the trust of our employees, continue to keep communications lines. That has all improved, there's no question, but make sure that everyone is available in quick fashion in the coming weeks, because we are trying to do everything we can as an office to make sure our employees are accommodated and they feel like they can work. And that has been incredibly challenging over the last many weeks and months. So thank you very much.
This is Barbara Sagaski. And Mr. Cates, I want to thank you and your staff for coming down and doing everything that you can to communicate with us and our staff and listening to the concerns, first of all. That was a major issue for the employees, is that somebody would listen to them. So I greatly appreciate the meetings that we've had and that you've been able to listen to each one of them individually. What I'm most grateful is I see Cy Ryan there, so I'm hoping that the story comes out really good, Cy. But it's the media. And just a little bit on that issue is that I've been concerned as to their reports and what they've been reporting, because they didn't know everything. And so I'm very, very grateful, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted this to come to us today, so that we could talk about it in its full context. So I am very grateful that it's out and that you are working on all of these issues. It is unfortunate when we do have these buildings that belong to the state and they perhaps are not taken care of or maintained at their fullest capacity that they should be on a regular basis. This is an older building. I remember some of the first things that happened when this building was first set up when I was in the legislature. But the reports, I know that one of the things I was hoping that the Attorney General would be here for this one, but I know that growing the molds to find out if there is mold takes time, and that you have to have, and I know we've got two different labs that are working on two different samplings, and that we're looking at that, and I appreciate the fact that you did two separate labs so we can see what the outcome is and on each of them. We do notice a difference of what you're doing there. We notice that you're there. We appreciate that. I won't go into the individual items that we've noticed change on, but we are very grateful, again, for the communication. We want to keep that door open continuously with you, Mr. Cates, and your staff. And again, we want to thank you for the report today. This was very important to get this out, and I will share it with the employees in my office on the 5th floor. And again, if you can just keep doing what you're doing, talking to us. I know that you're working with my deputies on the meetings and setting up. We'd really appreciate when the report comes, if we can do another on our agenda for today. And I do appreciate everything that you've done. If we can just have an update at our next meeting, just to see where we're at, I would appreciate that on the agenda again, Governor.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, and well said. And I think Buildings and Grounds understands the sense of urgency here in the health, safety, and welfare of the state employees that are in the Grant Sawyer building. So it sounds to me that you are pushing the envelope as much as you possibly can to get things done. If you will continue to do that, or if there's a way to expedite any of that, please do that as well. And absolutely, we'll put this on the agenda for the next scheduled meeting. Yeah, anything else?
If I could, thank you, Governor. Chris Shimmons, for the record. I would like to say to Madam Secretary that if you could just let Diane know that I'll be seeing her in a couple days. I'll be visiting, and also with the AG staff down there. We'll be following up to this report. I'm anxious to hear what any other information they might bring to the table. We'll adjust accordingly. And I want to assure you guys that we will chase this thing all the way to the end. Thank you.
And thank you. She was the one that spent most of the night here with your crew, and because of the sensitivity in some of the offices. So I don't know how late exactly she was here, but I would tell her thank you from you, and thank you very much, both of you gentlemen. Thanks, Governor.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, we'll move back to agenda item number 15, which is the approval of proposed master service agreements. I have no questions, Madam Secretary. Any questions?
No questions, Governor, and I'll move for approval.
Okay, Secretary of State has moved to approve the master service agreements presented in agenda item number 15. I second the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 2-0. We'll move on to agenda item 16, which is the approval of proposed work plan. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There is one work plan for approval by the board this morning, and there has been no additional request for information from any of the members.
I have no questions, Madam Secretary.
No questions. I'll move for approval on the work plan summary for number 16.
I second the motion. Any questions or discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 2-0. We'll move to agenda item 17, which is an information item. Clerk of the Board contracts, Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There were 40 contracts under the $50,000 threshold that were approved by the clerk between January 23rd and February 20th of 2018. This item is informational only, and no additional information was requested from any members.
Madam Secretary, any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to agenda item 18, which is another information item and reports. Mr. Wells.
Thank you, Governor. There are two reports under agenda item number 18. The first report is the quarterly overtime report for the second quarter. I had staff actually do a written two-page summary to kind of go through what I usually will read, so I'm not going to read that. I will tell you that I did look at the third quarter for the two largest departments, the Department of Corrections and Health and Human Services, and we're approximately 2/3 of the way through the quarter, and to date, the Department of Corrections has incurred about $1.6 million in overtime and comp time, and the HHS has incurred about $2.1 million for the third quarter to date. So that's where we sit with that particular topic.
Mr. Wells, are you feeling better about Department of Corrections in that situation?
Thank you, Governor. I think that currently on that projected scale, you're talking about $2.7, $3 million per quarter. They've been running between 5 and 6, so there definitely has been a reduction in overtime for this quarter.
Okay. Madam Secretary, any questions on the overtime?
No, thank you, Governor.
Do you want to move on to 18B, Mr. Wells?
Yes, the second report is a report on lands or interest in lands transferred, sold, or exchanged under the Tahoe Basin Act and the Lake Tahoe Mitigation Program. There were no activities under the Tahoe Basin Act, but there was one acquisition under the Lake Tahoe Mitigation Program. That was an acquisition of about 7.67 acres at a cost of $1.25 million. That was paid for from mitigation and restoration funds.
Madam Secretary, any questions on 18B?
No, Governor.
All right, we just did number 19, so we'll move to 20. Is there any public comment in Carson City? I didn't see none. Any public comment from Las Vegas?
No, Governor, none here.
Agenda item number 21. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Thank you, Governor.
Second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes 2-0. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.